What's up, guys? Today I'm talking about Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrants and income statements. And I'm going to show you the difference between a poor person and a rich person and how they manage their money and assets, and why rich people no longer need jobs versus poor people who rely on their 9 to 5 just to make their payments. So let's dive in. All right. So this is a poor person's balance sheet. Okay. Essentially, they have a 9 to 5 job, which results in income. And that is basically their sole income source. They rely on that job to provide income. So then their money goes right down here into their expenses and, out of their pocket, right? Those expenses are these liabilities right down here. So in a balance sheet, this is our income statement, this is our balance sheet. Our balance sheet basically is what assets do we have and what liabilities do we have, right? Liabilities are things like your mortgage payment. So the actual house you live in, a lot of people consider it an asset. In a sense, it's an asset, but does it take money out of your pocket every month? Then it's also a liability. So anything can become an asset or a liability based on whether or not you're using it to create income or it just costs you money. So assets are things that make you money, put money into your pocket. Liabilities are things that take money out of your pocket, right? So if you're relying on a 9 to 5 as your sole source of income, and then you have to pay your expenses, that's called paycheck to paycheck. Now, maybe you have a big enough income versus your asset, your liabilities or expenses that you can do okay. But when it comes to retirement, you're going to have to take a portion of that income and put it into other assets, right? So you'll take your income and instead of throwing it into expenses, you throw it down here into your assets column. And that would be things like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, your 401k from your employer, ownership in business or starting a business, right? So you can take some of your income and put it in here. Now, if you listen to some of the information from like Dave Ramsey, for example, he's all about taking that money, throwing it into, 15%. You should put 15% of your income into mutual funds for retirement so that you can retire without relying on the government or some other agency, right? So this is, erase this. This is basically the typical poor person. 9 to 5 to pay my expenses, and the cycle just continues. So now let's jump over here to the rich person. The rich person's income actually comes from their assets. So they've stockpiled enough businesses, real estate, stocks, bonds, etc., that this just funnels money into their income. And then, of course, it doesn't matter how many liabilities you have and what your expenses are, as long as they're much lower than your income, you're financially free, right? That would be sort of a rich person, someone who no longer relies on a 9 to 5, right? They can get rid of that in order to have enough income to then pay their expenses, which are, of course, their liabilities, right? So the goal for any of us is to have a balance sheet that looks more like this, where your assets list is very long and the income that comes from your assets is, of course, bigger than your expenses, right? So it's a very simple concept. So the way to do that, of course, is to take as much money as you can from your 9 to 5, invest it into assets to pay your expenses. And the poorer you are, the less cash flow you have, the fewer liabilities you can handle. So that's why Dave Ramsey, for example, is always telling people like, sell your car, sell your house, sell all this stuff that's causing your paycheck to just be wiped out every month. Get rid of that stuff when you're poor. Invest more of your income into assets. Eventually, you'll start to look more like this, where you've got tons of assets, not so many liabilities, big income from this, income from your 9 to 5, your expenses are no problem, and eventually you can add to your liabilities for entertainment, nicer cars, bigger house, whatever, as long as it never exceeds your income from your assets, you're free from your 9 to 5. So there you go. That's the that's the skinny of it. You can either be like a poor person where your 9 to 5 circles through your bank account and goes out through your expenses. You can take a portion, put it into your assets, start accumulating these so that your income becomes bigger and not completely dependent on the 9 to 5. And eventually you'll get back to having more liabilities if you want. But it will be no big deal because you have a passive income through assets. So you hear me talk about assets are the key to wealth. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. That's a Robert Kiyosaki philosophy. He's a very financially savvy guy. It's really about controlling cash flow. So poor people don't control very much of it. Rich people control a lot of it, right? They have the assets, they own the businesses, they have the real estate, et cetera. So poor people typically make these assets work for them, right? So someone is a 9 to 5er, they rent an apartment from a rich person who has real estate. Their 9 to 5 is paying the rent on this piece of real estate, which goes into this person's income, right? I take my 9 to 5 job, I invest in some stocks. I own stocks that pay dividends and appreciate in value over time, which both puts my income into my pocket and the value that I can later sell if I choose and have a large chunk of income all at one time. And then, I can turn around and buy more assets, pay my expenses, et cetera, right? So that's how that goes. I definitely highly recommend checking out Cash Flow Quadrants by Robert Kiyosaki. He has other best-selling books. Very savvy guy, made millions and millions of dollars in a variety of different businesses. He's kind of well known for real estate, but he's got his hand in a lot of things. He owns, oil and gold mining and silver mining companies and tons of real estate and a variety of other businesses. So this is how you want your income statement to look. You don't necessarily have to start with a 9 to 5. Robert Kiyosaki talks about, like, if once you get a job, you've thrown in the towel, you've kind of eliminated that desperate desire to like create your business and make it work. So he actually starts with businesses. He doesn't even want a 9 to 5, but I don't think everyone is fit for that kind of adventure. It's definitely a smart way to go if you are an entrepreneur, you're very interested in, business and finance and stuff like that. That's your thing. Then you should start with a business. If you're kind of that person that goes like, I'm not interested in that. I don't want the hassle. I'd rather just go get my, quote unquote, safe job and work my 9 to 5 and go home. Well, then you definitely should start with the 9 to 5, but make sure you're putting a certain amount into assets, and people are willing to manage this for you. So you don't have to be that smart in this whole thing. You just need to pull the trigger. Make sure that you don't spend all your 9 to 5 in expenses and not put any into assets. Okay, so I hope this was valuable for you. If you did like this and get some value, please hit the subscribe, the like button, share this with your communities. And if you are a YouTuber yourself and interested in upgrading your ability to market your own channel, I recommend TubeBuddy. So I'll put a link to TubeBuddy in the description. You can get those services for as low as $4.50 a month and up your game that way. So thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.